It was only a couple of points here and there where, if I'd acted a bit differently, I would have had a Wimbledon title. These words from Nick Kyrgios cut straight to the heart of one of tennis's most painful truths, the gap between talent and achievement. Today we're dissecting the psychology of someone who beat Federer, Nadal, and Djokovic the first time he played each of them, yet sits at 30 years old with 0 Grand Slam singles titles and a career hanging by a thread.
What we're witnessing with Kyrgios is the classic case of immense natural ability colliding with self-destructive patterns. He possesses what John McEnroe called the most talent of any player in the last 10 years, yet he's played only 6 matches since 2022. This isn't just about tennis. It's about how genius-level ability can become a curse when it's not paired with the mental framework to sustain success.
I've worked with players who had half of Kyrgios' talent, but achieved 10 times more because they understood something he never learned. Talent without discipline is just potential energy that never gets converted. His recent admission that he could have acted differently at Wimbledon isn't just regret, it's the realization that his greatest enemy was never across the net, it was in the mirror.
From depression and self-harm to substance abuse, from assaulting his girlfriend to attacking legends like Boris Becker on social media, Nick Kyrgios has become tennis's ultimate cautionary tale. Today we're exploring how someone with the ability to reach tennis immortality instead became the poster child for wasted potential, and what that teaches us about the psychology of self-sabotage. Let's start with the foundation of this tragedy. Dr. Foster, help us understand the psychological profile of someone who can beat the big three on debut but can't maintain consistency.
Kyrgios represents what we call gifted child syndrome taken to its extreme. He's been so naturally talented that he never learned how to struggle productively. When things got difficult mentally, emotionally, or competitively, his default was rebellion rather than resilience. He admitted to struggling with depression, self-harm, alcohol abuse, and drug use. These aren't character flaws, they're coping mechanisms for someone who never developed healthy ways to handle pressure and expectations.
The numbers tell the tragic story. He's been ranked as high as 13th, reached a Wimbledon final, won 7 ATP titles including doubles Grand Slam victory. But since 2022, he's played only 6 matches total. His current ranking is 633rd. When talent isn't supported by professional habits, mental strength, and emotional regulation, this is what happens, a slow-motion career collapse that's painful to watch.
His recent quote about Wimbledon is revealing. It was only a couple of points here and there where, if I'd acted a bit differently, I would have had a Wimbledon title. What's the psychology behind this kind of regret?
That statement shows both insight and delusion. The insight is recognizing that his behavior cost him titles. The delusion is thinking it was just a couple of points rather than a systematic pattern of self-sabotage. In that 2022 Wimbledon final against Djokovic, he argued with the umpire, demanded a spectator be removed, and lost focus at crucial moments. It wasn't bad luck, it was predictable behavioral patterns undermining his talent when it mattered most.
Let's examine the pattern. Coach Williams, how do we explain someone who can produce magic on court but consistently sabotages himself in the biggest moments?
Kyrgios is a classic case of fear of success masquerading as rebellious confidence. When you're naturally gifted, success comes easy early on, but as stakes get higher, the pressure to maintain that success becomes overwhelming. Self-sabotage becomes a defense mechanism. It's easier to lose because you acted out than to lose despite giving your best effort. That way, you protect your ego and maintain the narrative that you could have won if you really tried.
There's also the identity crisis factor. Kyrgios built his brand around being the bad boy of tennis. When you're known for controversy rather than titles, winning consistently actually threatens your identity. He's admitted feeling like people only saw him as the crazy tennis player rather than a human being. That creates a psychological trap where success feels inauthentic to who you think you are.
His off-court issues have been equally destructive. He pleaded guilty to assaulting his ex-girlfriend, struggled with substance abuse, and recently lost his BBC commentary job. How do personal demons feed into professional failure?
Personal and professional are inseparable at elite levels. When you're dealing with depression, substance abuse, and relationship violence, it's impossible to maintain the mental clarity and emotional stability required for peak performance. His social media attacks on other players, his legal troubles, his health issues, they all compound. Each controversy creates more stress, more negative attention, more reasons to retreat from the very thing he's supposedly talented at.
The contrast with champions like Djokovic, who he lost to in that Wimbledon final, is stark. What separates sustainable success from flash-in-the-pan talent?
Champions like Djokovic, Nadal, and Federer understand that talent is just the entry fee. The real work is mental discipline, emotional regulation, professional habits, and sacrifice. Kyrgios wanted the glory without the grind. He wanted to win on his terms rather than on the terms that winning requires. You can't party like a rock star and train like a monk simultaneously. At some point, you have to choose.
What's heartbreaking is that Kyrgios himself seems to understand this now. He's admitted that if he'd acted differently, he would have titles, but understanding and changing are different things. At 30, with chronic injuries and years of bad habits, the window for transformation has essentially closed. That's the cruel math of professional sports talent has an expiration date.
His mental health struggles add complexity to this story. He's been open about depression, self-harm, and suicidal thoughts. How do we balance accountability with compassion?
Mental health struggles are real and deserve compassion, but they also don't excuse harmful behavior toward others or waste of extraordinary opportunities. The tragedy is that proper mental health support early in his career could have prevented much of this. Instead, tennis culture often rewards bad behavior if it sells tickets, creating a toxic feedback loop that ultimately destroys the person generating the drama.
Now at 30, ranked 633rd, missing his third straight Wimbledon due to injury, and losing commentary jobs due to his reputation, is redemption still possible?
Tennis redemption? Probably not. He's played 6 matches in 3 years, his body is breaking down. The young players coming through are hungrier and more professional, but personal redemption, that's still possible. He could become an example of learning from mistakes, of using his platform to help young players avoid his pitfalls. The question is whether his ego will allow him to accept that role.
What's interesting is his transition to commentary. When he's not under the pressure of performing, his tennis intelligence shines through. He's insightful, entertaining, and shows deep understanding of the game. This might be his path forward, using his knowledge and personality in ways that don't trigger his self-destructive patterns. Though losing the BBC job shows even that path requires better behavior.
His story has broader implications. What lessons does the Kyrgios case study offer for identifying and nurturing talent without creating monsters?
The tennis world failed Kyrgios by rewarding his bad behavior early on because it was entertaining and profitable. We need to stop treating mental health as secondary to performance, stop enabling destructive patterns for short-term gains, and start teaching young players that professional excellence requires personal excellence. Talent development must include character development, they're not separate things.
Dr. Foster, what's the ultimate psychological lesson from watching one of the most talented players in tennis history essentially waste his career?
The Kyrgios story proves that talent without character is ultimately worthless. You can have all the natural ability in the world, but if you can't handle pressure, maintain relationships, control your impulses, and commit to excellence, that talent becomes a burden rather than a blessing. His admission about acting differently at Wimbledon is really an admission that he knew what he needed to do, but chose not to do it. That's the definition of wasted potential.
What haunts me is that this was preventable. If Kyrgios had received proper mental health support, professional guidance, and been held accountable for his behavior early in his career, we might be talking about him as a multiple Grand Slam champion rather than a cautionary tale. That's the real tragedy, not just what he lost, but what the sport lost when one of its most gifted players chose self-destruction over self-discipline.
His recent comments suggest some self-awareness has finally emerged. Is it too late for that awareness to matter?
For his tennis career, yes, it's too late, but for his life and legacy, maybe not. If he can channel that awareness into helping others, into becoming a voice for mental health in sports, into showing young players the consequences of choosing rebellion over responsibility, then perhaps some good can come from this waste. The question is whether he has the humility and commitment to do that hard work.
Looking at the broader sports landscape, how common is the Kyrgios pattern of extraordinary talent paired with self-destructive behavior?
Unfortunately, it's more common than we'd like to admit. Sports culture often celebrates and enables bad behavior when it comes with exceptional talent. We see it across all sports athletes who could have been legends but destroyed themselves through poor choices, addiction, violence, or simply refusing to do the work. Kyrgios is just the most visible recent example because his talent was so obvious and his self-sabotage so public.
What makes the Kyrgios case particularly painful is how aware he seems to be of his patterns while being unable to change them. His recent quote about acting differently shows he understands what went wrong. But understanding and implementing are different things. Without a complete personality transformation and years of therapy, that awareness will remain just regret rather than catalyst for change.
As he misses his third straight Wimbledon and contemplates retirement, what should be his legacy, the talent or the waste?
His legacy should be both, a reminder that extraordinary talent exists, but also that talent without character, discipline, and mental health is meaningless. He should be remembered as someone who could beat anyone on his day but couldn't beat himself on any day. That's not just a tennis lesson, it's a life lesson about the importance of personal development alongside professional development.
Dr. Foster, Coach Williams, thank you for helping us understand one of sport's most complex and tragic figures. Nick Kyrgios' admission that he could have acted differently at Wimbledon isn't just tennis regret, it's the epitaph for a career that had everything except the one thing that mattered most: the ability to get out of his own way. From beating the Big Three on debut to ranking 633rd and missing Grand Slams due to injury and behavior, Kyrgios has given us the ultimate case study in how genius-level talent can become a curse when paired with self-destructive patterns. His story isn't just about tennis, it's about how personal demons can destroy professional dreams. At 30, with chronic injuries and a reputation that costs him opportunities even in commentary, Nick Kyrgios faces the cruel mathematics of wasted potential. He possessed everything needed for tennis immortality, except the one thing that can't be taught: the wisdom to choose discipline over self-destruction. Sometimes the most talented people among us are their own worst enemies. His final lesson might be the most important. Talent is not destiny, character is. And when you choose chaos over commitment, rebellion over responsibility, you don't just waste your gifts, you waste the inspiration those gifts could have provided to everyone watching. That's the real tragedy of Nick Kyrgios.